We've got a special treat today, really a special treat. Doug Marsh, who is the Associate Vice President and University Architect. I used to know him as the University Architect when I first started working here in 1995. He's going to be talking about what goes on at the university and what is programmed to go on now. Doug has been responsible since 1995 for over $600 million worth of new and refurbished construction on this campus. One of the things you're going to see, I know this is just your first year, but over the 4 years that you're here, you're going to see buildings coming up, maybe one or two coming down, and the whole landscape of the place changing. I've seen it change so much in 25 years, it's pretty incredible. But he is a Notre Dame graduate, an architecture graduate of the class of 1982, and he worked in private practice here in South Bend for a number of years before coming here back into the university to take on his current responsibility. He was named an associate vice president about a month ago.
About 5 years ago.
About one?
5 years ago, that's okay. Just the role got expanded last July.
The role got expanded last July. I just lose touch. I know him as one of the hardest working, best people that I've ever known. He's a really good person. He's got an interesting set of stuff to tell you. So let's give him a welcome.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Sam. Pleasure to be with you all this morning and this afternoon, and a belated welcome to Notre Dame. Glad you're here. I really want to keep this as informal as possible. So as I go through the slides, and hopefully maybe give you a little bit of an introduction into the campus from a different perspective than what you've seen at the ground level, and a little bit of reflection on the past and what our predecessors gave us with respect to the campus planning and its development. Feel free to ask questions. And really, this is about what information I can impart to you about the roots in terms of where we've been, the physical plant, why we do certain things, why there's not enough parking spaces, why we put trees where we are. Anything is inbounds today. So anything I can do to help really maximize your experience as first-year students in the college and in the university is really why I'm here today. So welcome, again, belatedly to Notre Dame. As I said, I really want to spend some time in the first few slides to introduce you to, I guess, a broader perspective of more humble beginnings at Notre Dame. And I've picked sort of arbitrarily about 50 years ago. Maybe it's because I just in the last couple of years turned 50 and it's sort of a benchmark for me. But I think it also marks a very busy time in the subsequent 50 years in terms of its campus growth. Doug was referencing some of the things that have been accomplished over the last 17, 18 years, but it's really been over a span of time that's been really interesting, and particularly over that last 50 years, we've grown the campus almost a 2% rate per year, which is pretty significant, even though it's modest compared to some of our peers, but overall it has really advanced the university and maybe provide that infrastructure needed to take the university from its more humble beginnings to where it is today, but also where it can go. So this is circa 1960, and it's a view, as you can see, from kind of hovering above where the Joyce Center currently is, looking to the northwest. And we would be in a building about right here. And this was called Greenfield, and it was the place that a lot of folks parked for football games, and so you got assigned a Greenfield tag, and this was red field, and there was white field here and there. So, but this was Greenfield. Thus, the food service establishment across the way, about right here in the Hesburgh Center, called Greenfield's Cafe. That's where that name comes from. So this was also the good old days of close-in campus parking. So you see Cushing, but no Fitz. O'Shaughnessy had just been built, and this county road had just been closed and actually moved to the east side of the stadium. That was the beginning of Juniper Road. And tennis courts, and some new paved parking here that just hadn't quite opened up yet. So from a similar vantage point, 50 years hence, you can see quite a bit has happened, including the development of the DeBarlo Quadrangle, and including the Mendoza College of Business and the Hesburgh Center for International Studies, the recently opened 2 years ago Stinson Remick Hall. So a lot's happened. The greenfield is now DeBarlo Quadrangle. This parking uptight has been relocated to south of the stadium, south of the Joyce Center. And once was a road, just about 5 years ago, that Juniper Road was erased just until, or just about 5 years ago, and then reconstructed in the form of the Twickenham Road that you see to the east of campus. A little different perspective, this one looking to the east, same era, also known as the golden age of tailgating. Wonderful adjacency of everybody that came to the game just being within a couple of minute walk of the stadium. But you can see the landscape here at the university and what was beyond. So currently this is where the Joyce Center is, and then the LeBar practice and the soccer and lacrosse stadia in this location. The Goog is here. And this was just all sort of retired farmland, just mowed grass plain. From a very similar vantage point, you can see the development of the campus in that subsequent 50 years. We like to have fun with Photoshop, and so we have a series of sort of snapshots in time from the same angle, literally. And again, this is about 50 years ago with some license taken, like the stadium wasn't fully expanded, but that's my placeholder here graphically. But when you think about it, there was a line here right at the edge of the South Quad. In fact, this was a road. Door Road went through here. Okay, the Morris Inn had just been built in the early 50s. It was the only thing essentially south of that Door Road. So the South Quad, main quad, there was no library quad or anything. All that was the campus when I was just a young lad here. And in the subsequent 50 years, you can see the growth. So it's been dramatic. I love doing that, so I'm going to just do it again. Even I'm just amazed. To the point where now we have 146 buildings on campus and about 9.6 million square feet. It was 3.6 in 1950 with about 50 buildings. So we've added 100 buildings. And we've taken a few besides that. So we've probably built 110, 115 buildings in those 50 years and added a net about 6 million square feet. So when Doug said we've built $600 million worth, we've probably built maybe about half of that in the 18 years I've been here. So a lot happened before then. Also during this period of time, color was invented. And this is the campus essentially as we know it today. This is another way to represent the campus today. This is our campus plan, sort of representing, or having a drawing represent really the snapshot in time from an overhead viewpoint. So these are kind of the tools that we use as we think about how we'll grow the campus. And I'm going to reflect a moment on things that are happening in terms of you see some construction going on, what those are for, and what's imminent. What are in our plans for the foreseeable future that certainly we hope to accomplish while you are here in your undergraduate matriculation. And then I'll end with a series of slides to talk about sort of how we do, what kind of values do we use in terms of planning? Why do we do the things we do, and what guides us along those ways? So to talk about things that are happening now, I want to divide the campus in a couple of different zones because we continue to invest a lot along the southern edge of campus. So you can see that dramatically in those earlier slides where there was just blank fields, and so we were really isolated from the town. And it was this almost wall built, figurative wall or literal wall of trees and shrubs and grass. And so now we've engaged the thing over the last 15 or 20 years. We've had the opportunity because it's been just a tremendous gift of land from all of our forefathers who had the foresight to really reserve a lot of property, plan the campus, and it ultimately allowed us to expand it and engage it. So there's been a lot happening on the south for that engagement. Eddy Street Commons is a byproduct of that. 5 years ago, Eddy Street Commons, it was a woods. I mean, it was just absolutely nothing there, and so all that's developed. There's going to continue to be activity down there, so I'll walk through that. And then we're going to talk about our sort of our future growth zone, which is in the northeast part of campus. So we'll zoom in here, a little tighter. So we're in this building, Mendoza, so DPAC, Eddy Street Commons down here. This is orientation. Clearly, you see some construction going on right outside the south end of the building, and it's not exactly in that shape. This is kind of our placeholder, but it's the Stater Center for Executive Education. Will be completed next year, about this time. So one of the few days we had snow, went out and captured this photo not too long ago. It is a really exciting project for us. Ultimately, when we put the skin on, it'll look like this from about that same vantage point looking to the northwest. It's going to help relieve this building, which opened just as I arrived here in 1995. This is a heavily used building. You probably get that sense as you come in and out of it every day. Executive education programs have just expanded greatly. Huge success, really internationally renowned programs. They need their own facility, their own space. So thanks to Ralph Stater and his family, we have a major gift. Several other benefactors allowed us to advance this project. So you see it's a $30 million project. And I know I'm not speaking to a group of architects, but Robert A.M. Stern is probably, I would say, the foremost American architect in the current times, internationally renowned. And so he and his firm out of New York designed this building. We had a lot of Notre Dame architecture alums involved in the design of the building. It's going very well. Again, completed in about a year. So while you're here coming and going to the building every day, this building, you will see this edifice go up and be developed. We're really, really excited about it. We are planning a partner building to that. So on the other side of the quad, if you will, there's another parking lot here. Just right now, just sort of in reserve for a future building. So we want to have a new Center for Social Sciences. So that's sociology, for instance, and economics, moving out of buildings that are really compressing those departments in arts and letters, moving to a new place on the quad, very prominent location, really a gateway building, if you will, as you come up the wonderful experience of Notre Dame Avenue. Will be the first building you really encounter on the quad or on the avenue. So we are in the midst of fundraising. Here's a perspective, Notre Dame Avenue going down the main circle. And so this is the building that we're imagining here. And then that's the counterpart to it, the Stater Center when it's completed. So this is about a $40 million project. One of the things that I think our trustee and university leadership and administration have given the university is a lot of wisdom, particularly the fact of having a pretty conservative fiscal policy about all matters, but especially in fundraising towards construction projects. So you've all known we've experienced a sort of global economic downturn that have really stressed resources throughout the world, but particularly at American universities. We know several peer institutions that had construction stopped in the middle of a project, similar to like you'd see the Stater Center. People just leave the steel there because they didn't have enough money to finish it. The endowments had crashed. They just didn't have enough to really cover that as debt, and so they just froze the projects. We didn't freeze projects. That's because we raise our money to go for capital improvements in advance. So about 10 years ago, the leadership adopted this policy that at the time was looked by our peers as being way too conservative. We've had this project on the board for about 5 years, looking for the right mix of donors to fund the $40 million. But our trustees have said, we can't proceed with construction until 100% of that money is raised. And 75% of it actually is in hand and in the bank. And that the last 25% will be received within 5 years of the building's completion. So that's allowed us to keep going on. not leveraging other university assets and resources, not jeopardizing things like student financial aid to pay the bills on construction. So it's actually now been adopted as a model by many other peer schools. So Arts and Letters, really anxious to get this project going. It's probably now the highest academic building priority we have on campus, thus making it probably the highest priority on campus. We don't have all the money there. So we will hopefully within the next year or so, and actually design the building. This is just really a sketch and placeholder. Take a year or so to design it, and then about a year or so for construction. So it takes a long time to put these projects together. You really have to have a sort of a legacy outlook of the horizon as we plan the campus. Something that you'll see in the very near future is an addition to campus that doesn't actually equate to architecture. It's more landscape architecture. So here in the south edge of campus, we have a placeholder for a new art museum someday. So it'd be the kind of counterpart to the Compton, which I think is kind of really interesting. You have this sort of culturally rich little district with a performing arts center and an art museum in this locale with this great outdoor space. And then you have this athletic venue. This is really a magnet for people in the community and beyond. I think 2 weekends ago when the hockey team was playing on a road trip, we had 84 youth hockey teams from around the Midwest come for a 2-day tournament. I mean, and the parking lot was just jammed with people coming to the community to enjoy the Compton and play on the 2 sheets. So that's an economic driver. This can be an economic driver too if you have a wonderful museum, which you already do at this night, but we're out of space. It's kind of congested. It's hard to get to up here. So we're raising money for an $88 million museum. It would. So we moved the collection out there, have our own loading dock, big facility, but it'd be the single largest. We can fund this. It'll be the single largest by dollar project we've ever done. It'll be a signature building, wonderful site. Well, to help prime the pump, so to speak, get people excited about it, somebody's given us $1 million to build a sculpture park right behind here. So if you remember that area, it's kind of really pastoral. It's got some rolling landscape there and a lot of trees and open space. So we're going to build a sculpture park there this summer and fall. So students, faculty, neighbors, et cetera, can just sort of meander about. We'll have about 5 or 6 sculptures out in that rolling terrain, fully accessible, lit at night, so it's safe, and we'll have a revolving sculpture program. This is probably what's consuming my staff's time most of the time right now, and that's gearing up a really major reinvestment into things often called the Notre Dame Center for Hospitality, or the living room of the campus in some people's view, and that's the Morris Inn. Just this quaint little hotel that you remember in an earlier slide was all by itself. Well, we've grown, obviously, the campus around it. So 1952, it literally was considered really off the campus. Again, the perspective back towards the stadium. Nothing had been developed around it. The golf course was actually 18 holes before we built the West Quad. So it was an inn along the side of the road. Now it's encompassed within the campus. And while the building's been a tremendous asset, and it's a place people come back to time and time again, it's time for a major reinvestment in it. The systems are really worn out, time for renewal of those. And this opportunity expanded as a resource. So it's got 92 rooms now. We want to get that closer to about 150. So over the next about 18 months, we are going to be frantically or sort of surgically expanding this thing. So if you're down on Notre Dame Avenue looking back north, maybe catch a glimpse of the dome, you see this building clearly in the 1950s genre of architecture. Not particularly attractive maybe in our eyes today, but it was very attractive in the 50s. If you think about the era, it was post-World War II. The thinking at the time, the sort of styles of the time were modern is good, tradition is bad, and so we have a lot of sort of those modern buildings on campus. Things like Fisher and Pangborn came after that. The OIT building, a radiation lab. Some of those plainer buildings, Stepan Center, were really thought to be sort of state-of-the-art, cool things. That's just the perspective of that era. And that was certainly true in the form of the Morris Inn. So it's time to actually reclad it and reinvest in a significant way and put our signature on it to reflect the rest of campus. So to do that, we're actually gonna close the inn at the end of the near the end of the football season. We'll actually start some construction over the summer. So if when you come back in the August at the north end, we'll have some rerouted sidewalks and such. We're going to add a ballroom. We're going to add a new south wing. So that angled wing goes away, and make a major reinvestment. If you think about it, the building across the way, the Stayer Center, is about 55,000 square feet. It's going to take us 20 months to build. We're going to build new construction and renovate about 135,000 square feet. So 2.5 times that in half the time, in 10 months. At least that's on paper what we're going to do. It's because it's the home of Notre Dame hospitality, as I said, and especially during the football season. So our most important audience, our trustees, our advisory council members, our core benefactors that put so much in place, not just the physical campus, but the programs, contribute to student financial aid, contribute and create chairs, endowed chairs of faculty positions. Those folks are so used to being in the center of campus, we don't want to close the inn for the season. So we're going to close it the last couple of football games this year and build like 7 days a week, long days. Hope for this kind of winter next year. We've got a whole section of the grotto. We're lighting candles for that kind of weather next year. And hopefully open this thing before we play our first home game on August 31st of 2013. Which of course happens to be an earlier game than we probably have ever played, but that's just the way it works. Okay, let's pan our view up to the northeast part of campus. So just to orient you, here's the library. This is the big B lot, and then these are the student lots. And then Leahy Drive and the graduate housing out in this district. You can see the Mod Quad. We have plans to expand our footprint in a lot of different ways out here, but particularly important value is some new residence halls. So Duncan and Ryan were constructed in the last 5 years, and we want to build 2 more that are about the same size, so it's about 250 beds each. The purpose is not to accommodate a growing student body. That's not what we're doing at all, but to really help decant some of the more, well, and nobody knows better, some of the more, let's say, compact halls. So Dillon or alumni, you know you have some tiny rooms, so it might be a lot of a cozy triple. It can then be sort of a normal double if we create beds elsewhere on campus and move those beds out there, just like Duncan and Ryan were able to give us. And probably all are suffering from a loss of some study rooms and social space because the demand is so great. You lost those, we need beds, and they'll give those back to all the halls. And so we need those 500 beds to accommodate that. I mean, it's a great problem to have so much sort of retention on campus where 79–80% of our student body stays on campus, even though it's not mandated after first year. But the fact is, and you're all going through it, hopefully, that it's really a core part of the Notre Dame experience, is that stay-in-hall system, that ladder effect, create the variety of rooms, and so as you matriculate through, you kind of improve your room standing. Room picks are probably coming up very soon, so you're starting to see that progression as you think about who you're going to room with, and then what hall or what room you want in the hall. So the plan is to do more of that. Duncan and Ryan, a men's and women's twin hall, just to the east of the Mod Quad. So we'll tuck that in where our road once was, and at the same time reinvest in our major student activity space. So Stepan Center always gets a chuckle out of a crowd because it's an interesting building, to say the least. It has some leak issues. Hopefully they've been, I don't know if anybody's been experiencing that lately. We've been trying to deal with those. But it's a building that's probably met its useful service life. Yet it's a highly busy building. I mean, there's like 400 or 500 different events per year in any given calendar year, including the big section exams that they have in there that you're probably all familiar with. We need to do better than that. We need to expand that. And so we're going to replace it with a building about 4 times its size and about a $30 million price tag. And so it's been out there featured with development, trying to find donors that would really respond well, that might be interested in doing this. And I think that's going to happen in time. Hopefully it happens while you're here. That this is a major driver right now, trying to replace Steppen Center. There's a huge shift also happening, or maybe a renewed emphasis or growth towards research, and research of really trying to attack problems rather than discipline specific. So not a chemistry research building or a physics research or biology research or an engineering research building, but the buildings that support research that attack problems, as I said. So global health initiatives. So the mosquito issue that so many third world developing countries continue to fight decades into what was once thought as sort of controls of malaria, but there still continues to be major issues and loss of life globally on those issues. And so we have some of the best people in the world working on those things that need more space for collaboration. And we can bring in the engineers and the scientists to work together. And so we're looking for a series of buildings that will promote that kind of research. And that's just one example. And so ultimately we will cultivate that parking lot. That goes away. We'll build a new quadrangle right off the axis of the wonderful tower of the Hexburg Library. And then we'll replace the parking with the parking garage here, and then put the building in front of that garage so it helps screen it and not have that unsightly look that so many garages have. So we can get actually more space in a garage that's just nicely connected right on this road network, shield it from the new halls and the rest of the campus with this new series of major research buildings. Sam? There is a mix of university property and residents that still live on that street. This is actually sort of a geologic feature. It's called an esker, and it's like a little hill with a nice woodland on it. That hill used to actually go all the way through and end up by the lakes. It's the way the glacier left the place when it receded, and those lakes are actually left by the glacier. And so we're actually, this little spot of woods we're trying to preserve just because of that interesting feature, and it also buffers a fairly unattractive facade of the Loftus Center too. So we've kind of sort of limited in that athletic zone growth to that area. This is a little zoom in, if you will, of we'll probably take what was maybe a $100 million building, and with our policy, it takes a little while to raise $100 million, especially if you need 50% to name the building for someone. You gotta have a $50 million gift. So we're gonna do this in bite-sized chunks and build a series of 3 buildings in this zone. So our current thinking is, as we look at that lot, is the first one would be maybe right here, and then you can expand them this way, and then you can even expand them this direction. So more modules that all link together and are connected, and then at some point, take the rest of the parking away and turn that into a new quad. These are also building sites, behind the ROTC building, and even the OIT building could have an expansion on on the west side of it. And some sketches that we use to help raise the money, because people want to ask before they make these kinds of just very serious financial commitments. Well, what's it going to look like? Very good question. So we try to put together some early imagery to get them excited about it. Even though the design of the building probably won't look anything like it, people have to have that visual. So we've begun to suggest what those buildings might look like. So you can see the library here in the background with the dome way in the back. So that really encompasses what's going on now. I didn't put a shot of the wellness center that you see on the edge of campus. It's just a little bit north of here. It's that one-story wood building that's under construction. Probably didn't impact many of you if you didn't bring a car the second semester, but your colleagues in the residence halls, if you live on the east side of campus, probably were a little upset with us because we took away about 150 of their parking spaces and pushed them a little bit further north. Not into Michigan, but just a little bit north in the next parking lot. So that's a campus wellness center that will serve faculty and staff and their families in a very similar way that the infirmary serves you as undergrads. Just a way to help keep people on campus for wellness issues. You can get your meds filled there. Saves the university literally millions of dollars. This little $2.5 million project will be paid for by the savings and the healthcare savings end of things in less than 5 years. So I mean, it's a great investment. That allows us to then put more resources towards the mission of the place, student financial aid, faculty hires, research, those kinds of things, rather than in the case of healthcare benefits. So we'll devote the next just few minutes to wrap up my talk, and then we'll open up for more questions about sort of the future beyond what we now know. Before we do that, I want to take one last look at the back, or at the past. And to our knowledge, and to the archivist's knowledge, this is the earliest campus plan or master plan of the campus, sketched in pen and ink by the founder of the university, Father Soren, and his colleagues of the time. So clearly, obviously they knew they had two lakes. The space between them is always interesting. They didn't have the benefit of an aerial photograph. They didn't have the benefit of any kind of sophisticated surveying equipment. They literally walked and drew. They oriented the original main building on an axis. This is a different shape than the current building, and then this was the first church, just immediately to the west. This was the power plant with a chimney when they burned coal and wood in those areas, and then these were buildings that supplemented the academy, so all the classrooms, the faculty offices, and even the dorm was in this original building here. So they started thinking about Notre Dame Avenue as an axis about a mile long till it terminates on what we now call Soren Street and connects into the city. And then this was a road that came through at the edge of campus. So this would be about the north edge of South Quad in today's perspective. So today we have this as our plan. The white buildings exist, and then we paint in, as you saw in earlier slides, the buildings that we're projecting to build in the tan color. What we use are just a series of tenets, sort of our beliefs, our core beliefs as planners. I won't go into them in any kind of detail, but there's a website. You can download all the detail of our plan, and it really expands on these 7 tenets of planning, but suffice it to say, these are tools that we go to almost daily as we think about the design of buildings, what they should look like, how far their edges should go, why they get placed on a site the way they do, and how and why they're shaped. So if we follow these guidelines that are I think, very unique to Notre Dame, very unique, then that's a gift we can give to the next generation of planners, and hopefully they will re-endorse these. Maybe they'll modify them, maybe they'll add or delete to them, but ultimately we wanted to leave a legacy behind of explaining why we did the things we did. Maybe the most important gift we can give of the future is the addition of this blue line. So I'll go back one slide. So sort of watch the perimeter of the campus, kind of the core campus. We call it the blue line limit, and it's the limit that we want to keep the walkable campus to. So we have 1,250 acres, including the golf course, both golf courses, the lakes, Whitefield way up north. It's a lot of land. Our peers, in almost all cases, would just envy us because they're maybe restricted by a few hundred acres. They're in an urban setting, or in Stanford's case, they have a lot more acreage, but there's regulatory environment that limits their ability to develop that land into the campus. We have none of those restrictions. The restrictions that we have for developing all that are the ones we impose on ourselves. So there's often been, certainly before I got here and certainly since, occasional discussion is, wow, you know, why do we need 27 holes of golf? Shouldn't we just take the back 9 of that the old golf course, actually the front 9, this was the front 9 of the original golf course. Couldn't that be our next expansion of residence life buildings? So shouldn't that be a new quad? Shouldn't we just carry this south quad on, or do something else with west quad? I think everybody's on the same page here. Our facilities committee, the board, our executive leadership is that would start actually sprawling the campus, as we call it. So the core walkable campus, the class change time would have to increase by 5 or 10 minutes. We would need shuttles to get you from the north part of campus over to a classroom building out here by 933 and Angela. Energy would be literally just sucked out of the middle of the campus. And that's not what Notre Dame is. Notre Dame's walkable. Notre Dame wants to keep its cars to the edge. It wants to have the ability of people to really communicate and collaborate and build community within this walkable footprint, and keep class change time to an absolute minimum and keep the cars at the edge. And so we like this buffer. We think it's a wonderful foreground as people come from the city, come up over the hill and the rise, and you see over the course and you see our icon buildings of the Dome and the Basilica. That's the signal we want to suggest to people. And the same thing with the approach from this direction and from the east. So we have a commitment to ourselves, but also to the community, who are concerned that we will spill beyond our borders and cause conflict, push people out of their homes. We don't wish to do that at all. So we've communicated to them and made our own commitments that no major academic or residence life or athletic buildings are going to be built outside this blue line. And we hope subsequent generations can endorse that, adopt it as well, and keep the university to its compact footprint. We think if we can do that, and we're smart planners and value that piece of ground, use things like parking structures to replace surface lots, et cetera, that we can take that almost 10 million square feet that we currently have on campus, basically within that footprint, and grow it by 50%. So just taking full advantage of the site, building opportunities, using our tenants, keep Notre Dame the way you've gotten to know it, hopefully, in the last 6 months or so. It's one of my favorite shots of campus. I think it's the only, we played USC a couple years ago. I think it's the only time we didn't fumble, but I love it because it shows just the celebratory nature of the campus. Everybody coming to a sort of what's happening in the bowl here, but also just a beautiful representation of the rest of campus in the fall. I referenced the site or the website earlier. This is our website, easy to remember. A lot of information there. It tells you about current projects, tells you you can actually get more images here. You can also download a PDF of our campus plan if you're so choosing and are interested in that. It's got links to like sustainability websites and those kinds of things. You can also email us with questions through that website. So hopefully this has been a good indoctrination of sort of the physical assets of the campus, what's going on behind the construction fence, and what's going to happen maybe over the course of the next 3.5 years or so as I grow here at Notre Dame. So let's open up for questions. Yes, sir. Very great question. And actually, I have the wonderful opportunity to do a similar presentation to our alumni groups around the country. And invariably, some guy from the class of '52, what? You didn't say about Carroll Hall. What's happening? Great question. Even though it was outside that official blue line, we did it on purpose just because we didn't want to go out there and grab it. Well, actually, grab it right here. It's so small, I missed it, but I didn't want to grab that and then look like that we could build on that. But just because this is about the future growth, but it doesn't say that this goes away. In fact, it's still there, so that's good news. It's an important hall. In fact, we put $3 million into it last summer. I don't know if you could tell that from your previous visits. You're a Carroll Hall guy, I assume. So we've rebuilt the bathrooms, all new windows. We put a new roof on it, cleaned the brick, and all new landscaping. So obviously we wouldn't have put that money into it unless we wanted to keep it. So important hall. Love Carroll Hall. About 100 guys in there. So it's our smallest hall. Baden's a close second, but I'd argue that it's got some of the best community that we've got. And I love the quarters. I mean, you don't build buildings like that anymore. I mean, it's a wonderful hall. So rest assured, you're good to go for a while. Great question, though, and I should pick up on it because I'm always asked that question. Other questions? Yes, sir. Well, I'm hoping a lot sooner than that. So it goes back to that funding plan and that funding policy, which I think is great. We shouldn't do. I mean, it's just like anything. You wouldn't go. It's a problem with this country. So many of us went and bought things we couldn't afford to do. So this is just simple math. You got to have the money before you go and invest. And those halls are going to be $20 million each. Okay, so they've been on the queue and on the docket and introduced to potential donors for about 3-4 years now. If we hadn't gone through the kind of economic situation we've gone through as a country and as a world, I believe that one or both of those would have been funded and we'd be building them by now. But the fact is they haven't been, I think, somewhat driven by the fact that it's very hard to have multiple donors involved. Like the Stater Center, while there's Ralph Stater's the lead donor and gave half the money, there's a number of other donors that filled the funding out. They'll have classrooms named after them, those kinds of things, like the Jordan Auditorium here, in this case. Well, in the case of a residence hall, once you put the name on it, what else is there to name? Maybe the chapel. But it's not, you're not going to name individual rooms. So you really need the lead gift to be basically 100% gift. There's just not a lot of $20 million donors out there right now. People are waiting for their nest egg, their wealth to return to the days prior to 2007. We're getting close to that. Development's been tremendously successful in focusing gifts in the last couple of years as we have rebounded into things, very important things like student financial aid and research and faculty lines. The capital will come. So we have to be patient. I can't predict, don't have a crystal ball, but I got to believe within certainly 5 years we'll be underway with something. At least I'm hopeful of that. Yes, ma'am. Same thing, same answer. It's really funding driven. So we've queued these projects up, their priorities. It's just matching up the need with someone who's the interest to really, a series of people make some very serious commitments financially. So it'll happen. I'm confident of that. Yes. Good question. Yeah, we had hockey in here for the last 40 years, especially at North End. What are we going to do with it? So we've been in conversations with athletics about it. It's their building after all, and a variety of ideas being generated. One of the key commitments, though, that they've agreed to continue to make, and that is This building is also, while used primarily by athletics, also a university building. So it was originally called the Athletic and Convocation Center, so the ACC. And the convocation part is really important. It's our, if the Morris Inn is the living room of the campus, the North Dome is the dining room of the campus, because we can sit 3,500 people at tables wall to wall when we need to. And there's occasion in the life of Notre Dame you need to do it. Junior Parents Weekend is a great example of it. So we just got done with that a week and a half ago. In the days we had the ice still, we took the dasher boards down and put plywood and insulation on the ice. And that's, my son graduated last year. We sat on the ice for 2.5 hours. Got a little chilly, but that's where we were served dinner. I mean, so that's the home of our sort of major dinners. We want to keep that. So there's events associated with first year studies, your first year orientation. There's commencement activities in there. So we want to keep that as that open space. But then how do we maximize it for athletics? Baseball and softball would love to do some December, January, February workouts in there, where they could swing it live, pitching, and have nets maybe that catch the balls and that kind of thing. So we're looking at those kinds of multi-purpose uses and still be able to convert it back to the convocation space. So just finishing a master plan with them, and in essence, it won't be carved up. It'll remain as a big space, but I think probably, hopefully, utilized a little bit better than it currently is. So the timing of your question is perfect. Oh, sorry, missed you.
I noticed most of, do you work very much with athletics? Like, is there anything, like new buildings and new developments as far as athletics?
There's not currently anything on the sort of imminent drawing board. And, keep in mind, we're kind of the doers. So I don't set priorities, but once the university's established priorities, we're the mechanism to help people plan and get the vision done. So we just opened a brand new facility for the Compton, which hopefully everybody's had a chance to see a game or enjoyed some sort of function there, or even skated on it yourself. So that's a great new gift to them. They're funding quite a bit of it. Their donors are funding it, so gift to themselves. But it's a major new initiative for the university just finished. So what we have to do as leaders is balance those needs of athletics with some of the academic and student life needs. So it just is a matter of nature in athletics today, across the board, that those tend to be a little more attractive in some cases for benefactors, and so they might be more easily funded. So in essence, we're balancing that out. Fortunately, because we've had the benefit of a lot of generous donors, the Labars, the Olatas, other families donating to this, developing this whole new part of campus. I mean, this just 5 years ago felt like it was sort of an industrial backlot, and where we had the track up against the Joyce Center, and this was a narrow, awful road. And so we've done a lot of things over the last few years. So I think they're overall in pretty good shape, facility-wise. I think what you'll see more is sort of some of the digital imagery that comes out of the Joyce. You'll see enhancements in the scoreboards and those kinds of things. So it's more software kind of thing rather than hardware thing. So nothing imminent coming from them at the current time.
I see on this image, there's a lot south of football stadium. What's your plan with that building occupied, and what's the reasoning to get rid of that part?
Yeah, it's actually, this plan was updated in 2008, so this image is from there. And a lot of people have asked that question, including some of our most loyal benefactors who enjoy tailgating in that very same spot. So it's like, what are you doing? So we're actually in the midst of revising the campus plan. And I think you're going to see that sort of revert back to parking. The thought is, at the time, was that we would replace that parking with a structure here. So right on top of where Legends is. And we'd build Legends underneath that first floor and be part of that, so that Legends go away, but actually be a little bit bigger and a little enhanced. But I think that piece will probably still happen at some day. But I think we're going to preserve this more as surface parking, but maybe add some trees to it to soften it up a bit. So it's just not this hard, hot scape. day in and day out. But I think tailgating is an important part of our heritage. At the same time, having convenient, close-by parking for our faculty and staff, especially on this end of campus, encompassing law and engineering and arts and letters, and certainly the business college, just having that close by is probably better served as a surface lot. So we're actually revising it. And I think it's just an indication. I mean, campus plans, almost every university has something like this. But we hesitate to call it a master plan because it implies you sort of get locked in and you become sort of a slave to it. So we just call ours the campus plan, and it's always evolving. And we're always thinking about how to improve it and ultimately improve the hardscape and landscape of the campus. Yes. Great question. We actually haven't probably faced that since I've been here. Insofar as the buildings that we've taken down in the last 20 years have been like bus shelters, the post office. We did take something called the University Club down to build the engineering building, but that more upset some retired faculty and staff than it did people who donated towards that building. But ultimately, a campus grows and it evolves, and some things just change. So I know from other peers at other schools who have had to deal with this in a sort of more concrete way, a more significant building. It's usually quite an old building. It might be, in our case, 75 or 100 years old, and by that time, the building has served the university really, really well, and it's past its service life, and the reinvestment of that would be probably more expensive than to actually replace it with a modern building. So I imagine if there's still people of that family still connected with the university, that there would be a conversation and a celebration, and then we take the building down. So, maybe not a gift for life kind of thing, but there's certainly no guarantees when people subscribe to commit to a funded building that will last forever. But I think that maybe even suggests why, at least in the past, funding residence halls has been very attractive, because we just don't take a lot of halls down. I mean, there's something that's probably the most prominent use of names is the hall we live in. When you graduate, if you haven't already found this out as first-year students, the first question Notre Dame folks ask each other is really what hall they were in. Not even their major, what town they're from, but what dorm did you live in. And so that becomes sort of ingrained. But I'm hoping we don't actually have to have that discussion with anybody while I'm certainly here. But I think people overall understand the errors of these original gifts. Probably that many decades later, probably would understand. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, this is the first time I'm hearing it, so I think that might be an urban legend. I'm a Fisher guy, that was my hall. And I think they were just built in a very pragmatic time, as I said before. It was, post-World War II. University narrowly survived World War II. And if you've read about this thing historically, I won't go drift too far off into it, but the Navy saved us. We really became a naval officer training ground, second, I think, the number of officers trained during the war. Doug would probably know, even though he's an Army guy, than the Naval Academy itself. So there wasn't a lot of, just wasn't a lot of wealth to the campus, but we had this growing need of returning vets to school. We needed more residence halls, and so we built what we could afford at the time. So while they get a bit of a bad rap, I'm a little biased because I am a Fisher guy, but I like them. I like them because there's actually some really neat ornament on the building. There's no slate roof there. They're flat roofs, but look at the top of the buildings. There's some, and around the main entrance, there's some really nice stone and some carvings in there. They're nice and orthogonal. They've lined up nicely, and they behave well. next to my favorite building on campus, which is the South Dining Hall. Okay, so they're just, to me, they're like good soldiers. They're standing in line, they don't give us any problem, and they're kind of off the view. They don't distract from these more significant icon buildings like South Dining Hall and the Rock. And I think this is a nice little kind of sort of little mini quad area. I mean, they don't sort of draw away from anything. They just kind of soften with age a little bit. What was built in World War II as a temporary building is the old security building. So this is a little wood frame building that was only meant to last during the war. And this was like the training headquarters for the people that were coming for that purpose, and it's still here. And we're actually just putting money into it. We're moving the industrial design department out of Riley Hall into the second floor, and there's a little garage behind there. We're tearing that garage down, putting a little metal building up to house their workshop. So we're actually reinvesting in a building that was just a temporary building. So that definitely was considered that, but it's just a great location. Maybe someday we'll take it down and replace it with something more, and this would be a great building site if you can imagine that. But no plan to take these down, and we're really happy with where they're at. Other questions? Doug?
I really appreciate what you said about the old security building, old ROTC building. That was my first home campus. The first thing I heard was this building is coming down. We're getting to a new one.
25 years ago, yeah.
God bless temporary structures. Would you say something about what you had to do to work with the neighbors, Notre Dame's neighbors, 7, 8 years ago, get their buy-in on all the expansions and tearing down the campus?
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to. I love to reflect on the story now that I survived it. But so there was a road, as I described in earlier photographs, that went through here. And I just can't believe that you guys were probably in a middle school or elementary school, I don't know. So this was back in the early 2000s. We had 11,000 cars a day on that road. So you can imagine it kind of split the campus. We've been trying since the 1960s to move that road or close it all together. And the county, that's where we reside, and the city comes up to our doorstep here. But it's really the county that has jurisdiction. Just said, enough's enough. You already moved it once from here back in the 50s, and we're not going to let you keep moving this thing. And so we just got shut down. So that was a time that we just didn't have great relationships with the local, particularly politicians. And it's like, Notre Dame gets everything they want. We're holding tight. And so they tried in the 60s, tried in the 70s, tried in the 80s. They put stoplights in here, helped slow the traffic down because it was really becoming a dangerous situation. All the parking on the east side, all the destinations on the west. So finally, thanks to Monk Malloy, our president, who had been really thawing the relationships since the early or mid 80s with the local leaders and local residents, began to build a lot of bridges through various programs in the community. So it was all queued up. And we began working on this plan in 2000, 2001, and just the leadership at the time just said, we got to close that road. I mean, it's really, we've got to glue the campus together, and that road has to close. We can find a way to do it. It's really just taking a cue from what Father Malloy had started, rather than going into the politicians and saying, this is what we have to do. We just started just being transparent about our plans. And so we showed them the issue. We showed them the statistics of how many cars a day. About 2/3 of those cars were actually related to Notre Dame traffic. So there wasn't people using it to get back and forth to the hospital or their doctor's appointment, by and large. It was really just our business, our maintenance people, our students, our faculty coming and going from campus. This is going to impact very few people, really, certainly not Inconvenience, because it took a long time to go through all those stoplights. So we just went and just bared our souls, showed them our plans, and made ourselves vulnerable, because the politicians weren't going to take any risks for us. So we began a series of probably 40 or 50 meetings with local churches, local neighborhood groups, anybody that within like a 10-minute radius of the campus that was concerned and would use Juniper Road, that road through there, and just talk to them. And I got to meet people one-on-one, and actually would go to their homes, and they'd have a coffee with their neighbors. And I'd bring a screen, I'd roll the screen out, and I'd set something up like this on a little projector, and we'd go through it, and we just